The timer rule is another integral part of building good speech habits. Like Majid and David brought up, not only is it important to communicate in proper English language and also to use silence as an effective tool for communicating your speech, it is also important for you to learn how to communicate a message succinctly and in a short amount of time as possible. And that is the role of the timer. Cheyenne's prepared speech will be 5 minutes at minimum for the green light, 6 minutes for the yellow light, and 7 minutes for the red light. When you see the red light, it is strongly recommended for you to begin wrapping up your train of thought within 30 seconds. If there's a pocket speech, they will operate under the same time constraints as Cheyenne's speech tonight. In the table topics portion of our meeting, the green light will be shown at 1 minute, yellow light at 1 minute and 30 seconds, and 2 minutes at the red light period. Evaluation speeches range between 2 to 3 minutes, 2 minutes being the green light and 3 minutes being the red light appropriately. Back to you, Sean.
Thank you, Diego. Is there any, we have our prepared speech tonight, and then we have a slot for pocket speech. If anybody's interested in that, we'll go ahead and see if we have any volunteers for that.
Well, I always have pocket speeches. If you want to have me do one, I will. I'm also going to be evaluating, but that's okay. I can do that too.
Okay, so we have a volunteer for pocket speech then. And then also the table topics will be, oh, do we have a table topics master? You are Olivia, okay.
I am Olivia.
You are Olivia, can you please share the table topics?
Good evening, everyone.
Roll.
The responsibility of the table topics master is to give random questions and then allow guests and members to answer in 1 to 2 minutes. Just random speeches that you can get an opportunity to just express yourself. I'll say a few words, 1 to 2 minute pocket speech in response to a question that's given.
Thank you, Olivia. So, without further ado, we'll move on to our first.
Sean, can you have the general evaluator share their responsibility?
Yes. Lawrence.
Okay, the general evaluator evaluates the meeting in general, whether it started on time, whether everything went smoothly. Also, the general evaluator will introduce all the other evaluators like the timer, the counter, the grammarian, and of course the speech evaluators also.
Thank you, Lawrence.
Well,
so our first speech will be from Cheyenne on the topic of research and presenting. Research and presenting.
Hello, fellow Toastmasters and guests. My prompt was research, but I did not, but I was unable to come up with a title for my speech. So I just started a job at the Spanish Fork Fire Department, so I figured it would be timely to do a little research on how this community how this service came into the community and how they got started. So my information has mostly come off of firehistory.com. There's multiple topics, multiple tabs that you can check into if you want to look up and read some of this information yourself, because it's very interesting. So just to get started, in 1733, Benjamin Franklin was in Philadelphia, and he was writing multiple stories for his local paper, expressing the dangers of fire and the need for organized fire protection. At this time, they had had 2 to 3 major fires that took out a lot of the city, a lot of residents and businesses. At that time, there were only fire clubs, which were offered protection for its members but not the whole community. That also turned into a social club, so it wasn't just there for fighting fires. So in 1736, after a major fire, again in Philadelphia, Franklin decided to create the Union Fire Company, and he started off with 30 volunteers. So I thought that was interesting, that usually you don't know you need something until a major disaster happens, and then people kind of get on board with that. So in 1818, women began serving as volunteer firefighters as well. And fun fact, today women are only 7% of this profession. So backtrack, it wasn't until 1850 that cities started having paid full-time firefighters. So during the Revolutionary War, British used fire as a war tactic, and they would remove fire bells and alarms, remove the handles and slash the water buckets of the firefighters, and then so they couldn't go out and fight the fires that they were starting. And then if they were able to respond, they would turn on them and kill them. But during that Revolutionary War period, the American firefighters were exempt from serving in the military because they were needed in their communities. So fast forward a little bit to the Civil War in 1861. This is an interesting fact that I want you to add in. In Washington, D.C., the Willard Hotel caught fire, and 100 men responded. They didn't have any ladders, and their technology was not what it is today, obviously. But historical drawings show men holding each other by the heels over the building to reach the fire, and also standing on their shoulders, which is crazy to me how they did that. So, also in the Civil War, volunteer firefighters had compassion for the wounded soldiers because the military ambulances couldn't adequately provide the care, or there were so many they couldn't get to them all. So the volunteer companies started purchasing ambulances and created their own special call alarm to alert firefighters that it was a medical call to go get the sick and injured soldiers that needed to be transported. This is the first collaboration of fire and medical services, and also firehouses became medical stations when hospitals ran out of space. So that brings us to today. That evolved, and today in those fire stations you can find rescue trucks as well as their fire engines. In the rescue trucks they have medic bags, backboards, hazmat equipment, vehicle extrication tools, hydraulic spreaders and cutters, and capabilities to put out small structure or brush fires. So I just thought that was interesting, that them deciding to step up to the plate and see a need that needed to be filled kind of rolled into what we find today when we look at the service. So anyone who may be interested, I wanted to share with you guys 3 different types of careers when you're looking at firefighting. So there's federal, which is the U.S. Forest Service, land management, military, VA facilities, and also the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Management. Municipal, city, county, or state, which is what I am, pay is dependent on the economic resources of the area. You have rotating shifts. Some of these municipal stations have a combination of paid and paid and volunteer. So it's just depending on what type of station that is. And then the third is going to be a private company. So there are companies with a need for on-site firefighters, contract out to overseas. And then the downside to this one is that you may be doing other things besides fighting fires. They might have you doing security guard and maintenance because you're not doing firefighting the whole time. And then, so I just wanted to take some time to close to tell you about the municipal part of it, because that is what applies to us. So firefighters and the medics do other things just besides responding to calls, although they do have a radio on them at all times, just in case they do need to respond if they're out doing another event. Typical calls, structure and grass fires, although it's not very common, wrecks in our areas, mostly the Bayway, hazmat, incident smoke alarms, carbon monoxide alarms, and then power lines, and that can be business or residential. So other services that your fire station may offer you is fire and smoke detectors, free installation. They can even check your batteries, checking your fire extinguishers and showing you proper usage. CPR classes at the station, also teaching local high schoolers. Fire prevention presentations to local children in elementary schools. Fall and fire safety class to local senior citizens, and also they will also get called for to be standby at local events, example football games. Volunteers have significantly decreased in the last few years due to budget cuts, and also the start of combination stations where they have part full-time paid firefighters, and also still asking the volunteers to be there without pay. So some volunteers may be disappointed because you see firefighters on TV and it's go, 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 it's always crazy, but in real life there's station duties, there's a lot of downtime in between calls, and so we just want to encourage people that, even doing station work, the paperwork behind it, cleaning, checking the vehicles and the trucks is just as important as, going out, because without the dirty work of it, you can't do the exciting things. So it's a great opportunity to give back to your community. It can be a thankless job, but at the end of the day, it is worth every second that you put into it. So that is all. Thank you.
I did not know Ben Franklin was involved in fire history, so that was a pretty neat fact. All right, well, with our second speech, we'll have Lawrence give his pocket speech.
Fellow Toastmasters and honored guests, we have a wonderful opportunity this evening to learn a little bit about fire safety and firefighting type instances. So I'm going to give you a little bit of explanation of different fire problems that you might see. Now, when you're talking about fires, there are actually 4 types of fires that exist. You have a Class A fire, which is anything that produces ash. Wood, paper, anything like that that produces ash. That's a Class A fire. Now you have a Class B fire. A Class B fire is going to be any fire that involves boiling liquids. So if you had a gasoline fire, that would be a Class B fire. Then you have a Class C fire, which is any fire that involves electrical current. And then you have a Class D fire, which is burning metal. A lot of people don't know, but any kind of metal will burn if it gets hot enough. And then you have the newest type of fire. It's kind of a subcategory as a Class K, which is a kitchen fire. And the reason they have this as a separate category is because it could involve all of the other types of fires. If you, for instance, if you're in a commercial kitchen, you might have a deep fat fryer that's burning. And right next to this deep fat fryer, you had some napkins or something that are also burning. And that deep fat fryer's got electrical current going into it and boiling liquids, so you have multiple types of fire all in one place. So that's kind of a subcategory. Now, one of the things that a lot of people don't understand about a fire, the thing that you think is burning is actually not burning. What's happening is the heat that is on whatever it is that's burning is causing it to vaporize. And then that vapor is what's actually burning. So if you ever looked at a campfire, then a lot of times you see these hot embers of your log, and then half an inch above it is where the flames are, because you have to have actually 4 things for a fire to exist. This is called the fire quadrahedron. All right, and the fire quadrahedron involves oxygen, fuel, heat, and a chemical reaction. Without those 4 things, you cannot have a fire. So everything has to be in balance. It's kind of interesting. In nature, even the destruction of nature, everything has to be in balance or it doesn't work. But, so one of the important things to understand is what kind of products you would need to put out a specific type of fire. So if you can break the chemical reaction, if you can reduce the amount of oxygen, if you can reduce the amount of fuel or reduce the heat, then you can stop the fire. Any one of those. You don't need to stop them all. You only have to stop one. So the most common type of fire you're going to find in a household is Class A. And that's why most of your fire departments, their first line of defense is water. So on a Class A fire, wood, fabrics, paper, anything like that, you put water on it, it's going to cool it. And when it cools it, it no longer has the heat. You've broken the chain reaction, it stops. So that's why they use water on a Class A fire. But a Class C fire, you can't use water. Because if you use water, you're likely to get electrocuted. Because Class C fire is a charged electrical current. Now, a Class B fire, you could use water, but the problem is, if it's a petroleum product, it is lighter than the water. So you pour water on it, and the gasoline or the oil floats to the top of the water. It still can maintain its heat because it's on top of the water, and then it will burn. So a lot of times they use a foam. And so the foam, the bubbles will cover the fuel, and it'll break off the connection between the fuel and the oxygen, and it also cools the fuel, so then your fire will no longer exist. Okay, so those are the 2 main types of fires that are easily taken care of. Now, if you have in your home an electrical fire, then sometimes just turning off the electricity will stop the current, which is causing the heat, which is causing the fire. And then after that, it's fairly easy to put out because, again, you've cut off part of that chemical reaction. The electrical current is creating the heat, and then when you turn off the current, the heat may go down and the fire will go out. But if you were using a fire extinguisher, you would want to use a dry chemical or a CO2. Now CO2 would be best because it's going to cool the electrical components, but because it evaporates very quickly, when it comes out of the fire extinguisher, it's very cold, but it evaporates very quickly, and then it will not destroy the electrical components that have not been destroyed by a fire. So, when you are looking at a fire or looking at resolving a problem with a fire, it is always good to have that education and to have the understanding of what you can and what you cannot do. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Lawrence. That was good information.
Yep. I teach.
So we'll move on to our next part of the meeting, which is the table topics, and that will be given by our table topics master, Olivia.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So I decided that we should make our table topics tonight be real pocket speeches, which means you have to move fast on your feet. So I'm not going to accept volunteers. I am going to call you up. I'll give you the question, pick a person, and then you'll have a few seconds while you're coming to the podium or to the lectern to come up with your answer. So, are you ready?
Yes.
Alrighty. The first question is, if I were a color, what color would I be and why? Cheyenne, that one's yours. So,
Oh, I got it. Thank you. Fellow Toastmaster and honored guests, I've been asked what color I would be if I were a color, and I feel like I would be yellow. It's a very vocal color, and it's bright and happy, and most of the time I feel as though I am bright and bubbly. And I just think that yellow is a color that even if it's like dark and gloomy outside, yellow is a color that can brighten your day and kind of lift your mood when you are feeling down. And in my life, I hope that that's what I do for other people. I love making people laugh. I love seeing people smile. So I feel that yellow is the color that best describes me. Table Topics Master.
thank you. That was a good response. So everyone see how easy that is? The rest of them are just as easy. So, sunshine, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? And Mr. Lawrence, I want to hear what you have to say. Sunshine. What's the first thing that comes to your mind?
I've got sunshine on a cloudy day. Sunshine. Sunshine is such a beautiful thing. And it has so many applications. It's actually, as Cheyenne said, sunshine can be a very vocal thing. And it's beautiful, you think of the beautiful yellow sun, right, when you think of sunshine. But also, sunshine also has other meanings. Back in days of old, you would hear in the movies, oh, my little sunshine, right? Talking about children. Their children are like their sunshine. It's like what brightens up their whole day is that child. And the fun and the bubbliness and the happiness of that child is like sunshine to those people. So sunshine could have many different meanings. It doesn't just mean that the sky is clear and the sun is coming down. But it could mean that you have someone that really, really means a lot to you. And whenever that person's around, even on that cloudy day, you have sunshine. Madam Topic
Did you notice how happy he was when he was giving his description of sunshine? Because yellow and sunshine. So my next question is not, my next question is, I am happy. But why am I happy? I am happy. So just tell me one thing that you're happy about.
All Toastmaster friends and guests, the question being asked is being happy, why am I happy? So I wanted to, at this point, we have all reasons to be happy where we are, where we stand now. As normal as we are, as we strive through the day, have our things done, we have our families, we have our work, we have so many blessings that we stand on every day, that we look around, that we see some people who are not that blessed. So we have every reason to be happy. And happiness lies, as it was mentioned I think earlier in speech, like happiness lies inside you, how you feel around. So it's like in our language we say noise floor in our electromagnetic wireless communication. So how much is your noise floor for your L700 carrier, or like the cell phone when it's talking to the radio base station, what's your noise floor? So it could be, that's the ground level. So it's like noise, happiness is like how you feel about surroundings, how you accommodate it to yourself and express yourself. So happiness is a thought and being a sense of satisfaction in you, what brings happiness. You could have some shortcomings, but the concept of being satisfied where you are brings you happiness to your heart. So thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, it's 20 after. Yes.
I will turn this back to the.
The Toastmasters.
Okay, well, now comes the portion of our meeting where we go through our evaluations of the meeting and all the speeches, and the general evaluator will go over all that, so I'll turn the lectern over to Lawrence.
And I'll turn it back over so I can set this on top. This evening, our meeting did start on time. We had a little bit of confusion when we were going through our business meeting, but it all smoothed out and things started moving along smoothly. So we did have a pretty decent start in our meeting, and so far is going well. It looks like we're keeping on schedule, and we're going to be able to finish on time and do as we need to do. Now, as a general evaluator, I also get the pleasure and the opportunity to introduce those who are evaluating other portions of this meeting. And so the first evaluator that we're going to have an opportunity to hear from will be one of our older members in the club now, Diego, and he is going to evaluate Cheyenne's speech. So we're going to ask Diego to come up and evaluate Cheyenne's speech. Thank you.
Thank you, Lawrence, for introducing me as the evaluator for tonight's prepared speech. It is with great pleasure that I evaluate Cheyenne's speech. She is a mentee of mine, so I'm very thankful that I can continue to watch her grow and blossom into a good speaker, someone who is not afraid to take the stage and put on a good show for everyone. Okay, so some comments I would like to share about Cheyenne's speech, some good habits and some bad habits. One good habit that I thought was really great was starting off with the history of firefighting, as opposed to immediately talking about Spanish Fort and how a firefighting department is being run there. I thought it was a really interesting way to begin a topic about firefighting, and also really explain the scope of how this type of profession impacts us, not only for those of us in contemporary times, but also how people in the colonial era had to put up with these issues as well. I thought it was really great to point out that Ben Franklin was involved in this type of effort as well. Cheyenne, I would really like to see you next time step away from the lectern and help us better see the gestures that you gave. I was fortunate enough to be sitting at an angle, and I could see some semblance of your gestures that you were using to help complement or communicate a main idea. And I really think learning to let go of the lectern and be to the left, and also being on the right of the side of the lectern, will really help make sure everyone on the stage who's giving you their undivided attention can see that your gestures are also being used as a non-communicative, as a non-verbal method to communicate an idea in your next speeches. Cheyenne, I thought a really great sign of mastery of your speech craft now is something that I've consistently been a weakness in on my front, and I would say that is your vocal variety. I think one poignant moment in your speech was, I noticed it was a very kind of monotone speech when you were giving information about the profession, but I really liked how you quickly mentioned, if you're interested in this job, I thought that was a nice way to differentiate the speech as well, and I thought that was really poignant. That is something that's a big weakness of mine, and it's clear that you're developing that vocal variety muscle that really keeps those speeches really engaged and provide a diverse atmosphere to your speeches in the future. I think, Cheyenne, one more piece of advice I'd like to share with you is I noticed that you were swaying back and forth behind the lectern, and I think that kind of distracted me and perhaps other audience members. I think it kind of communicated that you were unsure about what next thing you want to communicate, and I really think that, again, stepping away from the lectern and focusing on maintaining, for lack of a better term, a more rigid posture will help convince yourself that you are confident in what you're sharing, and the audience members will be focused on listening to you more and the gestures that you provide, as opposed to being concerned of you swaying back and forth. But overall, again, Cheyenne, it's clear that the comedy speech, the Toastmaster DMing, emceeing kind of aspect that you've been developing with Serta Brewing is really coming through and shining brightly in these speeches that you're giving, and I'm really thankful that you're only going to continue to improve with more and more speeches that you give. With that, I'm going to relinquish the lectern back to our general evaluator. Thank you very much.
I'd like to make one small comment on what he said. I don't think that, I think he was looking for a different word, but I think that rigid would have to be a little bit of relaxed rigidity, because you don't want to be rigid, but you want to be relaxed. And if you're relaxed, you're not doing that kind of, what would it be, nervous motions that people do. So anyways, I also very much enjoyed that speech. I'm glad to hear that you're working with a fire department. By the way, what you never did say what you're actually doing. Are you one of the 911 operators, or are you out there fighting the fires?
No, I'm the fire and life safety coordinator.
Oh, okay, so you're a safety coordinator. Cool.
We'll be certified firefighter at the start of the year.
So you're going to actually go to school and do?
Go to fire college.
Ah, cool. Cool. Yes, I get the opportunity to teach firefighting at my the maritime school that I work at. That's how I know a little bit about this stuff myself. So that was a very good evaluation. Also, we don't seem to have, does anybody happen to have a second evaluation for the other speech that Lawrence gave? If not, then we'll just move on, and we'll get the evaluation from our timer.
Thanks, Lawrence. Tonight's speeches I counted were 7 people were up at the lectern tonight. So Cheyenne's speech was 8 minutes and 20 seconds. Lawrence's pocket speech was 7 minutes and 31 seconds. Cheyenne's pocket speech was 46 seconds. Lawrence's pocket speech was 1 minute and 20 seconds. Majid's pocket speech, table topics or pocket speech, whatever, was 1 minute and 37 seconds. Lawrence's evaluation I have written down was less than 1 minute. And then, thank you, Sean, for recording me. My time was 3 minutes and 30 seconds. That was how long my evaluation was. Back to you.
Very good. Thank you. And now our counter. David, how did we do?
Well, we'll start with you, Lawrence. You, on your speech, on your pocket speech, you started off with one but then you didn't have any more, except there was a couple of quick kind of just briefly. It's kind of weird. as I'm doing this, I notice sometimes people have a really like an
Real faint.
but then sometimes it's like and then they go right to it. So I wasn't sure if those really count or not. But you did very well, I thought. Cheyenne started off with about 4 uhs, but then you settled down. That was really the beginning of the speech, and afterwards there was a few quick uhs like I talked about, but you really seemed to settle down. And then your pocket speech, you didn't have any at all, so that was great. Majid, when in your table topics talk, I counted about 12 uhs, but I think you did very well despite that. But it's something I did count several. And Sean, as the Toastmaster, I only counted 1. And let's see, Olivia, I did not count any, and Diego, I did not count any. That's it for the odd one report.
Okay, so I thank you very much for that. I do believe that most of us are well within what would be expected at our educated level of speaking. People who are new, very often, they use a lot more filler words because in our society it's pretty much normal. If you ever listen to even seasoned politicians, it's one of the funny things. If you sit down with a Toastmaster when they're listening to a politician speak, it's like, oh, no, don't know, this is horrible, because everybody uses the ahs and the ums and the filler words and the likes and the ands. All of those can be filler words. I don't think that anyone did exceptionally bad except me. I should be, as long as I've been in Toastmasters, I should be completely free of any and ums and various other filler words, but I haven't quite overcome that. Oh well, such is life. Now let us hear from our grammarian.
Hi. About the English language usage, I think everyone, I didn't see any issues. It's good that nobody was counting me. So, second thing was about the grammarian word. We had vocal. We had Lauren use it once, and we have Sharon use it once. I thought to use it, but as soon as I heard my name, I don't even remember what was the word. So.
Yeah, one thing that I miss is there is the possibility to print up the word of the day. And even if we wrote it down and set it here on the lectern, then people who are speaking would see it, and that would remind them to use it. So that would be something that we could look into doing in the future, is write it down in big letters so that someone who's at the lectern, either down here or on the lectern itself, where they may be able to see it, and that would help them to use that. But we have been doing quite a few things that we could have done that would help us out, and eventually we'll get around to doing some of these things. So, apparently that's the end of our evaluation program. We are still pretty much right on schedule, so I will relinquish the lectern back to our topic master, Toastmaster, excuse me. Yeah.
Do I ask about the education overview? Okay. So, do we have an educational overview tonight? Doesn't seem like we have anything scheduled for that.
We don't have anything scheduled, but I can give a little bit of information about the pathways. If you want to log into your, do you want me to use your pathways? Do you mind?
No.
Me?
Yeah. Uh-oh. All right, pathways. While he's getting this up, I'll give you a little background on pathways. I was lucky enough to be one of the Pathways ambassadors and I was able to go around to different clubs and talk about how to use Pathways. Pathways generally is fairly easy. Once you have logged in, you're going to go over to the Pathways, and then you'll go to Basecamp. If you've already chosen, I'm presuming everybody's already chosen a path. So we're just going to go in and talk about how to get into what you want to do. So then you would go into Basecamp. On his, because he's also an officer, he has the ability to go in as a manager instead of just going into his path. So, but most of us will not be able to do that. We'll just go into here. And then we are going to go into the educational transcript, because that's where you will find your path. Now, once you get into your path, oh, very good. When you get into your path, you're going to see that you have the opportunity to open up that entire path, and then you will be able to go in and do any of the things that you do. Go back to level 1 for me, if you would, please. All right, so what happens is when you start up a speech, you're going to be able to open it up and start doing the different things that are in there. Now, once you get a level finished, you're going to get this little check mark. And in the icebreaker, you will not have access to the other. You'll be able to look at them, but you won't be able to do the speeches until you complete the icebreaker section. And the icebreaker section has an icebreaker, which is your introduction speech, and then it has 2 other speeches, I believe, that you have to do. Then you can go on, continue to the various different ones. Now, go back to level 4 where we could see the... now, if you... no, maybe it wasn't level 4. Which one had the... that were you on a minute ago? It had the, maybe it was level 2 with the, you had something in there with your, with the,
I think it might
the
have
mentoring.
mentor.
Yes.
Level 2. Level 2.
Level 2. Okay, so,
Can we launch it?
yes. Okay, so when you want to get into a speech or a program, you get in there and you go in, and it as you get in there, it's going to give you the whole program. Now you completed that, all right? Didn't it say?
mentoring?
Yes. Didn't it say on there to mark as complete?
Yes, I believe so.
So yeah, go just hit the little down arrow
Oh, no.
right at the very bottom, and then go to assess your skills after. All right. So at the beginning and at the end of each section in your path, you're going to have this evaluation that you can do where you rate yourself on how well you think you're able to do these different things. Go all the way to the end. And then once you do that, then at the beginning, and then when you do it again at the end, you can compare the two and see how much you personally have developed. Now, once you finish with that path, then you can go, when you go back, it tells you you've completed the project, and so then when you close out that window, it should have, it doesn't have it, but it should have it usually will say a thing on here where it says to complete the program, right? And when you click on that complete the program, then what it does is it tells Toastmasters that you have completed the program. But one of the officers, your vice president of education, the president, or the secretary, have to go in and actually verify that you have completed that program, and click on the verification, and they put their initials or whatever, and so then you will get your certificate. Then you will be able to go up, move on. But if you don't get that, if you hit that completion and nothing happens, then you personally should contact your Vice President of Education, the President, the Secretary, and ask them to go in and confirm that you have done these speeches. Now, with Easy Speak, it's going to be very easy for them to do that, because all they have to do is go in, they'll be listed on Easy Speak as an officer, so they can go in and open up your history and see, okay, he did this speech, did that speech, did this speech, did that speech, he's done, bingo. They go back to Toastmasters, they hit the complete button, and you're verified and you're ready to move on to bigger and better things. So the important point is, if you follow the path exactly as it's set up, and you make sure to contact your Vice President of Education when you have completed your speech and your speech evaluations, then they will make sure that you get credit for it. And I'm not sure, do you print up the things and bring them to the club, or do you have the members bring them to the club and then offer them when they get here? How do you usually do that?
We have the members do it.
Have them print it up and bring it so that
Yes.
we can
Yes,
officially
yes.
present it to them?
Yes.
And that's just so it looks nice, you know, you have a presentation, and we can put the nice little picture on Facebook and whatever. And also, when you complete a path, when you have completed the entire path, then you will have an opportunity to have certificates sent to your company or whatever, nice letter sent to your company saying that you have completed some level of training in whatever it is that you're doing, strategic management or whatever it is that you're doing. So that is a little bit of background on how to follow the Pathways paths. If anyone has any questions, I am more than willing to sit down with you personally and see what we can do to help you to get a better understanding of it, because I do believe that Pathways is a really good dynamic program, and I think that we can all very much grow through the use of the Pathways programs. I guess we're still in Toastmaster, not back to the press, right? Okay, Mr. Toastmaster, thank you.
With that, I'll relinquish the lectern to Diego, our president.
Thank you so much, Sean, for running the meeting smoothly today. We had a lot of great information for everyone. A big thank you to Lawrence as well for enlightening us more about the Pathways program. I know for the new members especially, it's new material, but even for maybe the older members, we're still trying to adapt and share their wisdom with us on these types of things to make sure that we are getting the most out of our Toast members membership. Again, we had a nice prepared speech. Thank you, Cheyenne, for doing the prepared speech, as well as Lawrence for providing a pocket speech. And Olivia, of course, great job with the table topics tonight. It's always good to keep us thinking on our toes and exercising that impromptu speech muscle. We are 2 minutes before the meeting ends, so this is just a reminder for everyone to please continue to use the Easy Speak software to indicate an RSVP to the next meeting. We have 2 prepared speeches for next week. We have Sean, who's going to be doing a speech, as well as Luke, who is absent but will be present for Monday's meeting. I remember the other piece of thing that I had to share. I've neglected to mention this during the club business, but I should mention it now, that you all received an email of the meeting minutes from last week, and Olivia has been doing a great job of keeping track of today's meeting minutes. You will all the members will be receiving an email of the meeting minutes, and at our next meeting, we'll be voting on approval of the meeting minutes as well. That is the new club business activity we'll be doing on top of passing around the prepared speeches calendar as well. We want to make sure that Olivia's hard work is not just not being seen by her alone, but by everyone who's involved in attending our meetings on a regular basis. With that said, we will adjourn the meeting and look forward to having you all at our second November meeting. Thank you all so much.